Welcome to this episode of Chattin with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today we're going to talk about the kidnapping of Frank Sinatra Jr. If you guys don't know, he was kidnapped in 1963. And I have a little small documentary type thing that I did on him. So if you guys want to check this out, we're gonna unpack all of this. So before we get started, make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you can get my videos every time they drop. Salvatore says Staxx is the hardest worker in the podcast game. Hey, I'll take that. I'm striving for greatness, and you'll see I will achieve it. I think I already have. But anyway, let's get to the story, and I got some extra things that I'm going to play after this. Now, these reports are straight from the FBI, so you can't take them all as fact. They're FBI reports. A lot of people lie, especially the rats we all know. Rah, how are you? So, without any further ado, let's get into the story.
Sinatra Jr. Kidnapping on December 8, 1963. A group of amateur criminals hoping to strike it rich engineered one of the most infamous kidnappings in American history. For several weeks, two 23-year-old former high school classmates from Los Angeles, Barry Keenan and Joe Amsler, had been following a 19-year-old singer from city to city, waiting to make their move. Their target? None other than Frank Sinatra Jr., son of one of the most famous singers in the world, Old Blue Eyes, himself. Their plan was bold but simple: snatch the young Sinatra and demand a hefty ransom from his wealthy father. The abduction the pair decided to strike on the evening of December 8, 1963, just days after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Sinatra Jr., just beginning his career in music, was performing at Harrah's Club Lodge in Lake Tahoe on the border of California and Nevada. Around 9 p.m. he was resting in his dressing room with a friend when Keenan knocked on the door, pretending to be delivering a package. Keenan and Amsler entered, tied up Sinatra's friend with tape, and blindfolded their victim. They took him out a side door to their waiting car. The singer's friend quickly freed himself and notified authorities. Roadblocks were set up, and the kidnappers were actually stopped by police, but they bluffed their way through and drove on to their hideout in a suburb of Los Angeles. The investigation by 9:40, the FBI office in Reno was brought in on the case. Agents met with young Sinatra's father in Reno and his mother in Bel Air, California. The motive was presumed to be money. The FBI recommended that Sinatra wait for a ransom demand, pay it, and then allow the Bureau to track the money and find the kidnappers. The ransom demand the following evening, Keenan called a third conspirator, John Irwin, who was to be the ransom contact. Irwin called the elder Sinatra and told him to await the kidnappers' instructions. On December 10, he passed along the demand for $240,000 in ransom. Sinatra Sr. gathered the money and gave it to the FBI, which photographed it all and made the drop per Keenan's instructions between two school buses in Sepulveda, California during the early morning hours of December 11. Sinatra goes free while Keenan and Amsler picked up the money. Irwin had gotten nervous and decided to free the victim. Sinatra Jr. was found in Bel Air after walking a few miles and alerting a security guard. To avoid the press, he was put in the trunk of the guard's patrol car and taken to his mother Nancy's home. Young Sinatra described what he knew to FBI agents, but he had barely seen two of the kidnappers and only heard the voice of the third conspirator. Making the case still, the Bureau tracked the clues back to the house where Sinatra had been held in Canoga Park and gathered even more evidence there. Meanwhile, with the FBI's progress being recounted in the press, the criminals felt the news tightening. Irwin broke first, spilling the beans to his brother, who called the FBI office in San Diego. Hours later, Keenan and Amsler were captured, and nearly all of the ransom was recovered. Although the defense tried to argue that Frank Sinatra Jr. had engineered the kidnapping as a publicity stunt, the FBI had strong evidence to the contrary. The clincher was a confession letter written earlier by Keenan and left in a safe deposit box. In the end, Keenan, Amsler, and Irwin were all convicted.
And that is the story of Frank Sinatra Jr.'s kidnapping. It's crazy that they thought that they could get away with something like that. Blue Eyes himself wanted to just pay the money and be done with it. He didn't want to deal with a whole bunch of bullshit, which he ended up dealing with a lot of bullshit because the FBI had him doing all this crazy shit. But the kidnappers almost got caught as they were doing it. Like they almost got caught as they were driving away with the victim. But anyway, we have another little snippet for you guys. These are little short stories, and I hope you guys enjoy them. Hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to help the channel out. We can do a lot more if we get some funding. You can hit up the Cash App. It's Chatting with Staxx. I want to thank Nate for his donation yesterday on PayPal. That was really generous of you. I really appreciate everyone who takes the time. So let's get into the next story.
Original name Myers Shaliansky, born July 4, 1902, officially assigned date by U.S. authorities, Grodno, also spelled Grodna, Russian Empire, now in Belarus. Died January 15, 1983, Miami Beach, Florida, U.S., one of the most powerful and richest of U.S. crime syndicate chiefs and bankers. He had major interests in gambling, especially in Florida, pre-Castro Cuba, Las Vegas, and the Bahamas. A Polish Jew born in the Russian Pale of Settlement, Lansky immigrated with his parents to New York's Lower East Side in 1911. By 1918 he and the American gangster Bugsy Siegel were running a floating crap game and then graduated into highly lucrative auto theft and resale. In the course of the 1920s, Lansky's gang branched into burglaries, liquor smuggling, and other rackets and came under the aegis of crime boss Giuseppe Masseria. Lansky and Siegel had also developed a squad of professional murderers for hire, the prototype for the later Murder Incorporated, headed by Louis Buchalter and Albert Anastasia. Lansky became a naturalized citizen in 1928. It was allegedly Lansky who persuaded the Italian-born crime boss Lucky Luciano to have Masseria assassinated in 1931 and provided Siegel's services for that purpose, making the four-man hit team representative of the major New York crime factions. Between 1932 and 1934, Lansky joined Luciano and the American gangster Johnny Torrio, among others, in forming the National Crime Syndicate and became one of its major overseers and bankers, often laundering funds through foreign accounts. By 1936, Lansky had begun to develop gambling operations in Florida and New Orleans and also in Cuba, where he arranged payoffs to Cuban dictator Fulgencio Batista. He also financed Siegel's casino developments in Las Vegas, and ordered Siegel's execution in 1947, after Siegel welched on the syndicate. When Fidel Castro came to power in Cuba in 1959, Lansky turned to the Bahamas, building casinos on Grand Bahama and Paradise Islands in the 1960s after nurturing government cooperation. He also extended his gambling empire to other areas of the Caribbean and even across the Atlantic to London. He was involved in narcotics smuggling, pornography, prostitution, labor racketeering, and extortion, and had control of such legitimate enterprises as hotels, golf courses, and a meat packing plant. Monies were secreted in Swiss banks. By 1970 his total holdings were estimated at $300 million. In 1970, fearing both a call to a grand jury and indictment for income tax evasion, he fled to Israel, seeking to remain under the law of return. However, Israel eventually expelled him, and he ended up back in the United States facing several indictments. In 1973 he was convicted of contempt of a grand jury, a verdict overturned on appeal, but acquitted of income tax evasion. Indictments on other charges were abandoned in 1974, partly because of his chronic ill health. In 1979 the House of Representatives Assassinations Committee, ending its two-year investigation of the Warren Commission report, linked Blinsky with Jack Ruby, the nightclub owner who killed U.S. President John F. Kennedy's assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald.
What's up, everybody? I hope you guys like that little short. I got one more for you before I go. And I've been working on a lot of things. I got a big show coming tonight with Matt Granahan. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of stuff. Shout out to Matt Granahan. Maureen, how are you? Thank you guys all for watching today. Rah, what's going on? Bruno, we got some breaking news too. So I guess Donkey Dominic is in rehab. He's in detox. So pretty crazy, right? So I wonder what happened when he was out with them other mob rats. I have an idea, but we'll have to wait to find out. I appreciate all you guys. Let's get into the next story.
Also known as Tony, circa 1922 Lower East Side, Manhattan, February 18, 1982 Lower Manhattan, was a street soldier for the Bonanno crime family who worked under caporegime Michael Zaffarano, involved in extortion, gambling and drug trafficking. He is famous for being the individual to introduce Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, Special Agent Joseph Pistone into the Bonanno family, which led to its major downfall. Mafia roots Mira was born to first-generation immigrants from Mira, Italy in Lower East Side, Manhattan. He is the nephew of Bonanno crime family caporegime Alfred Imbarreto and uncle to street soldier Joseph D'Amico. Mira was a cousin of Capo Richard Cantarella, Capo Frank Cantarella, Bonanno crime family mob associate Joseph D'Amico, mob associate Joseph Padovano and Bonanno crime family Capo Paul Cantarella. Biography: Mira was born in the poverty-stricken Lower East Side, Manhattan at Knickerbocker Village, where he lived in the same apartment building as Imbarreto, Richard Cantarella, and D'Amico. Anthony was once a good friend of Benjamin Ruggiero. Anthony owned the Lunchbox Luncheonette in Little Italy, Manhattan, not far from Ruggiero's bar. His relatives D'Amico, Imbarreto and Cantarella became involved in major racketeering schemes at the New York Post distribution center behind their housing complex, but Mira moved on to more successful and prosperous racketeering endeavors. Pistone says that Mira was the nastiest and most intimidating man he met during his 7 years of being undercover. Mira stood at 6 feet 2 inches and weighed 210 pounds. By age 50, Mira had spent more than half of his life in and out of federal prisons. It is estimated that by 1975 Mira had murdered 30 to 40 people, although he was never convicted any murders. Mira had a reputation of being ruthless killer with unpredictable mood swings. He was the self-confessed assassin of Anthony Carfano and comedian Alan Drake's wife, Janice Hansen, in 1959. Due to Anthony's irrational behavior, nobody could ever build a close relationship with him. He would never talk about anything that did not involve criminal activities. Unlike most mobsters, Anthony never drank alcohol, only ginger ale. The only family he was close to in his lifetime was his biological mother. Joseph Pistone says, "One day you might ask him, 'How's your mother, Tony?' He might say, 'Okay.' Another day you ask him, and he might answer, 'What the fuck you so nosy about?'" Even with his mood swings and arrogant manner Anthony displayed regularly, he was a womanizer who enjoyed group sex. Women became attracted to him, even though he treated them like dirt. As a child and into his adolescence, he had never shown any interest in friendship or romantic relationships and was bullied throughout his childhood by peers, which ended in violent fights, and usually with the other one getting stabbed. Anthony never married but had many girlfriends that ranged from bimbos to movie stars. When he wasn't hustling them, he abused them physically and berated them with insults. Anthony remained a recluse from his fellow mobsters. As an adult, Anthony would visit his mother regularly, every Sunday, to drive her to Mass, Mother's Day and her birthday. On the day of his visits, he would not commit any crimes the day before, the day of, or the day after visiting. Anthony was the first initial contact FBI agent Joseph Pistone made in his undercover operation, which led to his infiltration of the Bonanno crime family. He introduced Pistone to Benjamin Ruggiero and offered the FBI agent a job handling his slot machine route. Not long after their partnership sparked up in 1975, Mira fled New York City after being indicted for drug trafficking. The FBI caught up with him 3 months later and he was sent to federal prison again for 8.5 years. After the sudden and untimely death of his capo Michael Zaffarano, Mira took over the Bonanno crime family pornography empire and worked under the equally powerful Sicilian capo Cesare Bonventre. Mira also muscled in on several Little Italy, Manhattan restaurants and bars. A knife man, Mira was known among fellow mobsters as a knife man. It was a common practice for all mobsters to carry knives, because they were routinely rousted by police officers and didn't want to be caught with illegal firearms on them. Mira carried a folding knife with a long blade. It was uncommon for mobsters to ever use their blade, preferring the use of a firearm, unlike Mira. While Pistone was undercover, he was repeatedly warned by fellow mobsters that, if you ever get into an argument with him, Mira, make sure you stay an arm's length apart, because he will stab you. Reputation on the streets, Mira was always in trouble, either with the authorities or fellow mobsters because of his obnoxious behavior and insults. Anthony had no real allegiance to anybody and always in trouble with the authorities, which gave him a bad reputation on the street. He was widely despised, but just as widely feared. Everyone tried to avoid contact with him. Mira never spent his own money and demanded that everything was on the arm, or free of charge when he was with anyone. Mira also extorted from the food stands at the Feast of San Gennaro, which was held in Little Italy, New York City. In Joe Pistone's view, Mira was a better money earner than Benjamin Ruggiero. At the time Pistone met him, within 4 months of being out of prison, he said he'd made more than $200,000 for himself. He had a large territory under his control and numerous mafia contacts. It was widely believed by the authorities and fellow mobsters that he was a psychopath. People around him put on an act that they were Mira's friends because they feared him. He once dated a lesbian vendor who worked at the Feast of San Gennaro and got her a street vendor stand. After she told Anthony of her sexual orientation, Mira threatened to kill the girl if she returned to the stand. Criminal enterprising, he also was involved in a vending machine operation that dealt in slot machines, peanut vending machines, video arcade machines and pinball machines that were distributed all over New York City. He had them installed in stores, luncheonettes, social clubs and after-hours establishments. The slot machines, since they were illegal, would be installed in the establishment's back room or basement. He would open the machines with a key he carried and give the store owner his cut of the profits, $25 and up. This coin collection route produced $2,000 a week. Mira was involved in strong-arm schemes and extorted from several bars and restaurants. Each of the owners would pay him $5,000 a week in protection money, which he would become irrational if he did not receive. The Bonanno Civil War in 1979, following the takeover of Philip Rastelli as leader of the Bonanno crime family, the family divided into two factions. The Red Team, led by capos Alphonse Indelicato, Dominic Trinchera and Philip Giacconi, including Cesare Bonventre, Gerlando Shosca, Nicholas Marangelo and Michael Sabella, and the Black Team, led by Dominic Napolitano and Benjamin Ruggiero. Taking a stand against the family the day before Philip Giacconi, Dominic Trinchera and Alphonse Indelicato were to be executed, Mira announced at the Toyland Social Club to Nicholas Marangelo that he was joining the opposition. On May 5, 1981, the day of the executions, Dominic Napolitano called Mira's uncle Albert Imbarreto and told Albert to come down to the motion lounge for a sit-down. At the sit-down, Napolitano had two of his sidewalk soldiers flank Imbarreto on either side of him until Napolitano received confirmation that the executions were followed through. Dominic would later tell Joseph Pistone, when Albert heard that, he turned ash white. He thought we were going to hit him too. But I just reamed at him about Tony, told him Tony was no good, and that Albert, better recognize that and act right himself. Albert agreed. The aftermath of Operation Donnie Brasco on February 18, 1982, his cousin Richard Cantarella lured Mira to a parking garage on North Moore Street and West Moore Street in Lower Manhattan. As Cantarella and his uncle Alfred Imbarreto kept watch outside, his cousin, Joseph D'Amico, climbed into Mira's burgundy Mercedes-Benz and shot him in the temple at point-blank range. When the New York Police Department tapped on his window, hours later, Mira looked like he was sleeping. His head had fallen forward so his chin rested on his chest, and his eyes were closed, but blood drizzling from his ears indicated otherwise. He was shot 3 times, 2 behind his ear and 1 in the cheek. A 4th bullet had lodged itself in his left knee. So much blood had drained down inside Mira's jacket and into the seat of his pants that even his yellow boxer shorts were saturated red. Cantarella had been given the contract to murder Mira by Joseph Massino. The hit was in retaliation for the Donnie Brasco infiltration. After Massino had Dominic Napolitano murdered the year before, Mira went into hiding, fearful that he was next to be slain. Massino figured Mira would trust his own members of his family, which was the reason Massino gave Cantarella the assignment. It is ironic that the site of Mira's execution was in the proximity of the current Bonanno crime family consigliere Stefano Canoni overlooking Pier 25, part of the South Street seaport on the Hudson River in Lower Manhattan.
If you guys like this content, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We got a lot more content on the way. Tonight, I will be live around 8 o'clock, sometime around 8. So stay tuned. It's about to get real. And if you like this stuff, hit the like button, subscribe. And if you don't, start your own fucking podcast. I appreciate every single person that watches this show. If you want to donate, you can hit up the Cash App, Chattin with Staxx, or you can hit up Venmo, PayPal, Super Sticker, Super Chats, any of them other ways, Zelle. And I appreciate all of you guys. I'll see you later. And remember, don't be a bitch.